just to make sure everyone knows who's here and folks that are tuning in online. So I'll kick things off. So, oh yeah, and by the way, microphones are in the ceiling, so speak a little bit loud so folks can hear you. My name's Alexis Pickering. I'm the commission president, and I serve District 2, which is largely Garden City and the Boise Bench, as far west as Eagle Road. Super happy to have you guys here and obviously we've got a lot to talk about, and please ask questions throughout. We're really eager to hear your thoughts and have this conversation with all of you. Commissioner?
Great. Jim Hansen. I represent Commission District 1, which is southeast Boise and much of the bench.
I'm Jimmy Hollyburton, Vice President Pro Tem of the City Council, whatever it is we want to call it. And I was voted in at large, so no districts at this point for me.
I'm David McKinney, ACHD Commissioner for District 5, which is Northwest Meridian.
Colin Nash, recently appointed to an at-large Boise City Council seat.
Tanya Keith, and I was recently appointed to the District 3 seat.
I'm Miranda Gold, and I represent ACHD Commission District 3, which is essentially everything north of the Boise River.
Morning, I'm Patrick Bajan. I'm one of the Boise at-large council members.
I'm Holly Woodings. I serve as president of City Council and also serve District 5, which is essentially, west downtown all the way out to Warm Springs Mesa and up to the bench, so kind of central Boise.
Lucy, not to put you.
I know. Thank you. I do have an excuse. My ankle is actually broken.
Oh, it's actually. Stop it.
So I finally got a chance to get an X-ray yesterday.
Do you need a chair to prop things up?
Maybe actually that might be nice.
Okay,
we can get some there. Hello everyone. Thank you. I am happy to be here in my limping state. I'm Lucy Willits. I'm on the Boise City Council. I'm in District 1 and I'm West Boise. So the current district abuts Meridian, Garden City, Eagle, and then the new district will go just a little bit further over the freeway. So I'm really interested in talking more about that because that's a part of town we haven't dealt with.
Thank you, Lucy. Thanks, Justin. Okay. All right. So our first item is the chip seal operations update. Ms. Jennifer Behringer.
Good morning, Madam President, Commissioners, City Council members. I'm Jennifer Behringer. I'm the Deputy Director of Maintenance for ACHD. And I'm going to take you through the chip seal program. The location where we're chip sealing this season is primarily in the Boise area, so this should be of interest to this group. I'm going to start off with a real quick video. It's just kind of it's an overview, shows what everything looks like if you're out watching the chip seal program. And then I'll talk through why we do chip seal and what the process looks like. We'll start with this.
What tomorrow will bring. Maybe down the road.
excited to be in chip seal season right now. And a lot of people that we get questions from the community wonder why we even do this. You saw from the video, it's kind of it's an overlay of sorts. You use the emulsion and put chips over the top of that. It's what we would call a preservation technique. So it's preventative maintenance. It's getting ahead of a problem before it becomes a problem. I've talked to the media before, and I've explained it as sunscreen. When you put sunscreen on, you want to get the sunscreen on your skin before the UV rays have a chance to burn you. And our chip seal is similar to that. So if you look at the chart, our pavement condition index throughout Ada County is at an 81 points right now. So on a scale from 0 to 100 is actually in the excellent and very good category. And we've been credited to have that level of pavement condition because we do the chip seal as a preventative maintenance to get that surface kind of refreshed and protected every 7 years for the arterials and collectors. So you can see from the chart, when you have a brand new, I'm sorry for those who have their backs this way, but I'm gonna point to this one. You have your chart that shows the pavement condition index and the age of time. The red chart shows it, once you build your road, it will degrade over time just naturally. The UV rays are gonna break down the oils in the asphalt, and it'll just become brittle, it'll crack. You'll have those visible cracks, and over time, you'll get alligator cracking and complete failure. Water will slip down into those cracks and degrade the base. So clearly we need to do something rather than letting the roads slip away. Because really your life of the road is 12 years or so. So what we do is we go in before the road gets too bad, and we do the chip seal. And having this program where we go in and chip seal every 7 years or so, it reinvigorates the life of the asphalt and it protects it. So we extend the life of the roadway much longer. Your alternatives are, once it gets down to that fair category, then you start looking at needing to do a mill and overlay or mill and inlay. You'll see this on projects like ITD, I think, is doing that right now on Broadway. A lot of ITD roads do this mill and inlay. And then you have much worse, if you let that road degrade, then you're doing a full reconstruct. And at some point, you can't just keep chip sealing up and up and up. You're gonna have to probably do something more significant. But based on the costs of what it takes to chip seal, 22 cents per square foot to chip seal. And we're doing that over, like I said, every 7 years. Mill and overlay is 10 times that in cost. And then your total reconstruction, you're looking at $10 per square foot. So clearly reconstruction, we don't want our roads to get so bad that we have to do that. So we have a pavement management team who looks at the quality of the roads. They determine what the right treatment is for that road. A lot of times it's chip seal, and sometimes some of the roads have gotten to the point where we need to do a mill and inlay or mill and overlay. So cost is the main driver. Chip seal really is it's cost effective, and we have the taxpayers' pocketbooks in mind when we do this. So it preserves the road. It's a least expensive alternative, and to me, one of the hugest impacts is it doesn't close down roads. When you're doing a mill and overlay, you're probably closing down lanes. You might have to close an entire road. Definitely if you're reconstructing, the road is closed, and you're talking months of time for closure. Chip seal is a mobile process. You'll have traffic that'll be held for maybe 15 minutes, and that's it. And a little bit of chip that they might be concerned about with windshields, but overall, it's cost effective, and it gets people on their way faster. So they don't have to sit and hold and wait or completely reroute. So this is how we've split out Ada County into our preventative maintenance zones. And the intent is, by splitting it out like this, and I'll just kind of highlight zone 4 is where we are this season, we're able to get around the county every 7 years by having 7 preventative maintenance zones. So a lot of our focus area this year is on this zone, preventive maintenance zone. In the winter and fall, or winter and into spring, we were doing crack sealing. Our concrete crew was out fixing a lot of the curb and gutter stuff. Asphalt patches were fixed up. The vegetation crew was trimming up trees and working with residents to cut back the vegetation. So that's been a focus really since winter. And now we're in this area doing the chip seal. So looking forward, zone 5 is where we'll be next year. So you'll start seeing a lot of those efforts more into the hill areas for for next season. So our plan for this year, for our chip seal season, we're starting out with one composite crew. So we have our Adams yard, we have our Cloverdale yard. Back in the good old days when we had a lot of people looking for work, we were able to do the 2 crews. Ever since the pandemic, we've kind of struggled to get the temps and some of the flaggers that we need to do two full crews, but things are really starting to look up. So starting out this year, a single crew, we're hoping to get 2 crews going once our training is kind of up to speed. Lots of new employees, so we want it to be a safe chip seal season. We started our season on May 30th. That was right after Memorial Day, and we'll run August 31st, but it really goes into September. August 31st is the date for like the main operations, and then we still have paint striping and some other things that's done into September. So just kind of know it'll end by the end of September. So our prioritized chipping, since we are just doing the 1 crew, our minimum is we're going to get 100% of the arterials and collectors chip sealed in this zone. There will be some exceptions. We work with our projects team. If there's a project that's going to be happening there, we tend to not chip things that we know that is already going to be done with another project. If there's other kind of work being done, underground work they're cutting trenches, we'll kind of leave that for a while and see if we can get back to it. Once we split out into the 2 crews, or if we get through the arterials and collectors quickly, we'll get into the residentials, and our goal is to hit 50% of the residentials in each season. So with us only doing single crews for the past few years, a lot of the residentials aren't getting hit per our goal. But when we do get in there, our priority for the residentials is to do the school areas, directly around the school routes, the bus routes, newly paved roads. This is another kind of chief complaint we get from the citizens. They're like, well, why did you just chip seal my road? It's a brand new road. It was just built 3 years ago. As I said, with the UV rays, you start getting that degradation of your asphalt almost immediately. So the industry standard is to try and get that chip seal on a newly paved road every 2-3 years. And then if we've missed anything in the last cycle. Total anticipated cost for chip seal is $5.8 million. We're looking at about 20,000 team hours to make this happen. And our goal is 309 lane miles. We're looking at 45 working days to make this happen. So I'll take you through the process. As I talked about before, all the preparation that goes into it ahead of time. A key part of that preparation is you'll see the sweepers out, cleaning the roads, making sure we have a nice clean surface for the chip seal to go down on. And then we'll have the main operations, and you can kind of see from this, and hopefully you saw it really well in the video, but you've got a distributor truck up front, and he's laying down this emulsion. Then the chipper box following behind, and then you'll have the dump truck that backs into the chipper box. They go into neutral, and they get pulled as a trailer of sorts for the process. Then this guy will unhook, you'll have another dump truck back in, and it just keeps moving. You'll note the way that the traffic flows, we are in oncoming traffic. So that actually is a fairly safe way of doing this, because then as the cars are routed around, they can see the entire process and they're not trying to kind of pass and create more of a safety issue. And we always have a flagger walking alongside. There's a lead truck, and then following behind here are the rollers. The purpose of the roller is to start to orientate those chips so they get a good wear surface. After the chip is done, the rollers go over it. There's a period of time that we let the traffic drive over it, and traffic is actually critical to making sure that those chips are orientating too. So you're getting a better level surface. Then after a couple of days of that, we'll send a broom out again, and he'll do the bulk sweeping. So he's picking up a lot of those excess chips. So the cars are pushing stuff in, and then we're gonna pick up the stuff that didn't get pushed in. And then after that, we have our fog seal. So this is the newly chipped part of the road, and then on this side has already been fogged. So you can see the color difference when it's a fresh fog seal going down versus what he just did maybe 30 minutes ago. So it sets up pretty quickly. That fog seal is an extra layer of protection. It seals things. It helps with that moisture intrusion to stay out. Plus it creates this beautiful black surface for when we have our paint stripers and marking crews out. to paint those lines up. And then that kind of concludes the operation when our stripers get out and make the lanes just look gorgeous. So really, all in all, we're on a road for about a week and a half. That's the impact of the entire thing. Week and a half, 2 weeks, and it should be done. We've been preparing for this, like I said, since winter, testing out our equipment, getting it rolling, meeting with leadership, a lot of coordination meetings. So we coordinate closely with ITD, with the railroads, our bicycle coordination teams, a lot of people coordinating on this. With ITD, it's always working with them on when we're getting close to those roads, and then just making sure that we have all the traffic, all the traffic control set up properly for the ultimate safety of the commuting public. We work with Ada County Sheriff's Office for dispatch, so they're aware of what's happening. We presented to the commission May 17th. And then we also had a communications connection meeting, and we had communications teams from everywhere. I think we had representatives from City of Boise as well. So a lot of the cities, other people that are interested in this, as well as media outlets. So a lot of work goes into making sure people know this is coming. We've got a lot of signs that are going out, showing which areas we're gonna be in. We started off the season May 30th, and we didn't chip seal on Juneteenth, and we're planning on taking the 4th of July holiday weekend off as well. That's not just for our guys, it's knowing that there are gonna be a lot of people out on the roads, and we don't wanna impede anybody's 4th of July travel plans. So we kind of take that break and let the traffic not be impeded by the operation. Estimated completion for the main part of the operations is August 31st, and then, like I said, toward the end of September, then all the painting and everything should be done. And that's when we have our victory party. So our communication strategy, multi-front war on this. So we do the print communications. So we've sent out postcards to the neighborhoods that are gonna be impacted. Door knockers when we're like right up against somebody's house, we need cars to be moved. So it's communicating with them, flyers, and the door knockers are people who go and try and communicate in person. We have our digital media that we have out there. One of the key things on this is our interactive map, which I'll show you toward the end of my presentation. Lots of information goes out on our website. We collaborate with the cities, collaborate with HOAs, collaborate with ITD. Lots of collaboration, and we're trying to do as many press releases and media relations as we can. Just complete transparency. We want people to know we're here, what's happening, and what their impact is gonna be. So the interactive map I mentioned, I know this is really hard to see on this screen, but this is available on our website for all the community to go and see our progress. The area that's in blue is the entire chip seal area that's planned. This area, I just pulled this map last night, so this is pretty up to date. This area in orange is what we've completed so far. Each of the lines kind of on there are indicating how we've moved. So we're actually moving through the county kind of in this direction, moving up, and then we're gonna kind of snake through this area and then hit the rural areas last. So our key for this area was really making sure we hit the school zones as early as we can, so we're not gonna impede any of the school year going into August and September. But this is available on the website for anybody to take a look at, and you can see which roads we are going to be on. Those are the ones that are highlighted, and it shows the entire zone. So that is pretty much all I have. I do invite everybody to come out. Mayor McLean, welcome. As you recall,
Super fun.
good times, big smiles. So we do invite everybody from the cities to come out. We'd love to have you on board with us and see firsthand how we accomplish our chip seal. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Thanks, Jennifer. Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, there's a lot of times a neighborhood will say, the striping in this area needs to be changed, a crosswalk needs to be put in, the bike lane's too narrow. And as you know, if we were to take up paint and you have these shadows, so we'll try to hopefully get it done in the chip seal season. So while it's only paint, it's just a repainting. Sometimes people are a little surprised. Oh, there's a new configuration, but that's long in the works, and so it's a coordination with our planning and engineers. So there's a couple of streets in those zones that we repainted in a much safer way. And you'll probably hear about it if you haven't already. That there's a slightly new configuration, perhaps parking isn't being used, and so that can be used for a safer area. Anyway, they've all been researched, but we typically try and wait, am I saying it right, Jennifer, until we can chip seal so it's on fresh pavement instead of trying to.
Yeah, because there's a cost to line obliteration, so a lot of times we'll get the markers out ahead of time, plan it all out. Chip seal will go over the top, and then you'll have that new configuration, so it's not confusing where old lines were and where new lines are going.
Jennifer?
Yes.
One of the other, and this is just kind of a trivia tidbit, but for those of you who are concerned about your own staff, when the temperatures hit 100 degrees, we don't chip seal. If you could imagine on that black top and everything at 100 degrees, it's a lot hotter than that. We don't work that.
Madam President, thank you so much, Jennifer. That was a great presentation. You had mentioned early on when you were talking about kind of the life cycle of pavement versus when you chip seal to maintain it for longer. How many times can you usually chip seal before you have to do a little bit more intense? I don't know.
Excellent question. Excellent question, Madam President, Commissioners, City Council. I'd say about 3 times, and then you start getting too much of a height on it. You start seeing some of the, I didn't really mention this with the manholes, so manholes that are in the middle of the road, we have to raise those up, and we have a contract that does that when we've been over multiple times. But I'd say about 3 times, and you just have a natural just age to roads. So about 3 chip seals. So we're really extending the road to about 25 years rather than 12.
Great. And just a comment, I loved hearing you talk about beautiful, like gorgeous roadways. Your passion really came through. I've never really thought of roadways in quite that language, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, the next one is our leading pedestrian interval update. Thanks, Paige. And before you get started, I just want to give some backstory as to why we're really excited to give you this presentation. So, you know, in our previous joint meetings, we've talked a lot about Vision Zero, your guys' values around safe streets for all, and looking at it more systematically from our end of things. And then, of course, we've had a lot of pedestrian deaths this year, quite shockingly high compared to last year. And so the commission back in, I just remember it was February?
Yeah, February.
So February, as a commission, we made a decision to institute this program and do LPI, or leading pedestrian intervals, across our entire system. So this is a massive undertaking and a very wholehearted commitment to making our infrastructure safer. And so I'm particularly proud of the work that Paige and Kelly are doing. So, anyway, take it away.
Thank you, Madam President. So I'm Paige Bankhead. I'm one of the civil engineers here. I'm one of the project managers. Kelly Baker is also another project manager. She's a traffic engineer, but she wasn't able to join us this morning. So I'm going to be giving you guys an update on our leading pedestrian interval implementation. So before I get really started, for those that aren't familiar with LPI, it's a safety measure for pedestrians to get a head start into the crosswalk before the green light turns green, before vehicles start turning in the adjacent road. So that way they're visible to cars, and it's been proven safety measure by the FHWA. So, and usually it's about a 3 to 7 second start based on the intersection geometry and other factors. So far we have 25 out of 457 signals with LPI. Our goal is to start this, well, obviously in earnest this year, and implementing them close to schools and parks and other pedestrian attractors. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of signals, a lot of different factors that go into when we can implement LPI, so we really had to get a head start on this earlier this year, and there was a lot of front-end evaluation of each signal. So 31 signals were identified where ACHD staff can internally implement LPI in addition to the existing intersections with LPI. These signals, in order to do this, these signals can't be a part of a coordinated network, because in a coordinated network, each signal relies on a full signal timing plan and they all work together. So if it's an individual signal, it's easier for us to adjust the signal timing in a way. And they already had to have accessible pedestrian signal measures at the intersection and ADA compliance. So intersections that didn't have that, we are looking at those later, which I'll explain more. But we went for the low-hanging fruit first, and we found that 31 signals could do this, and we could do this internally. And occasionally signals will require equipment upgrades and collection of updated turning counts for analysis before LPI can be implemented. And so that's something we need to get ahead of time before we can actually start implementing this measure. So far we have implemented LPI at 4 additional signals out of the 31. More will be coming soon, and like I said at the front end, there was a lot of evaluation of existing intersections and improvements. So now that we have organized the signal information, our goal is to have LPI implemented at signals 1 to 2 a week. So to give you some background on what exactly it takes to implement LPI. So to implement LPI, like I said, the most recent intersection turn counts and volumes are needed for the signal timing analysis. If there haven't been any recent counts in the last 3 years, new counts will need to be taken by our traffic technicians. We like to have the most up-to-date volumes and data to make sure we're doing the best that we can for the signal timing and efficiency. A request is then submitted to our traffic technicians to collect those counts. So once those counts are collected, a work order to implement LPI is submitted to congestion management with those counts. Congestion management verifies if the controller firmware at the signal is compatible with LPI and will convert the controller firmware if needed, and that takes a little bit of time. So then congestion management creates the signal timing plan and programming required for the intersection for LPI. If the controller needed to be upgraded, the controller is programmed before implementing LPI at the signal. It's programmed with the updated signal timing and tested in the shop before installation to ensure everything is operating acceptably. Ask a question. Oh, did you have a question?
I was just asking.
Sorry, I'm going on a roll.
Yeah, I was asking the chairman if it's okay to ask questions as we go along.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So I want to make sure I understand this. Just like I might wait when the light turns green to drive through an intersection in case somebody is running red light. Is what we're doing here just holding up a little bit of time to give the pedestrians?
Exactly, yeah.
Can you explain how that works? Like if I'm crossing the street as a pedestrian, what will look different for me once this is implemented?
So what will look different is if you're crossing the street, you'll get your walk signal, but the light will not turn green on the adjacent traffic. So they'll still be at a red light. Typically what would happen is they would also have the green light, but for 3 to 7 seconds, there'll be the walk signal and then the green light.
So it gives them a head start.
Yeah, it gives them a head start pretty much, just so they're visible, like I said, and it increases the safety measures, so.
Commissioner Coulthard?
Because Lucy brought this up, I'm gonna bring mine up at the same time. One of the cautions that I see with this Head Start has to do with the folks that think they have the freedom, these are motorists, to run a red light 3, 4 cars after the light turns red. And I can just see somebody with a white cane or a wheelchair getting squashed if perhaps enforcement isn't stepped up when these things are implemented. Just my opinion.
Any other questions, Lucy?
Yeah, thanks.
So if the controller needs to be upgraded, the controller is programmed with the updated signal timing here in our shop before it is actually put out into the field, just to make sure everything is safe and it's operating acceptably. After the testing is completed, the signal timing change is deployed in the field by congestion management and the signal maintenance team. So right now we're happy to report that out of our 31 signals, the ones that needed new turn counts, we have completed that, and our work orders have been submitted to congestion management, and they're in the process of programming signal timing and getting that process through. So we're working as quickly as we can. So in the city of Boise, there are 21 signalized intersections with LPI so far. I'm not going to read off the entire list, but I'll give you guys a second to look, and if you have any questions, obviously, let me know. All right. So those 31 intersections where internally our staff can start implementing LPI right away. So there's all those remaining intersections, and that's a lot of intersections to implement LPI in the timeline that we want to implement it. So we split those into 4 packages. We have ITD, ACHD intersections, coordinated intersections, intersections that are not within a coordinated network, which we call uncoordinated intersections. These are signals without accessible pedestrian signals, so that we'll have to install that and make sure ADA ramps are in there as well when we implement LPI. And then the Boise downtown area. We split this up into 2 phases. So the first phase, there'll be existing signal controller inventory to determine if the controller is compatible with LPI. Let's see here, and our consultants will be doing that. So we've hired 4 separate consultants to evaluate these 4 packages. They will also determine in this first phase if APS and ADA improvements are required. Potential right-of-way impacts from those improvements, if we need more ramps and whatever to bring up to compliance. And the goal for phase 1 is completion by September 1st. And so part of phase 1 will also involve them looking at phase 2, which is what will be involved in the actual analysis of LPI and implementing this. So developing more of a timeline. So right now we're really gathering a lot of information and having consultants help us so we can move this along. So our next steps, we're continuing the internal implementation process. We're finalizing our consultant contracts, and we'll bring those to our commission for award as necessary. We'll begin the evaluation for phase 1, so our consultants will start doing that as soon as possible. And we do provide quarterly updates to the ACHD Commission at work sessions, and the next presentation is September 6th. So, and if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Goldthorpe?
Just one comment, and it has to do with the preparations for the majority of our intersections in Ada County to get the LPI, and that has to do with being up to date with the ADA requirements. And so if it were up to me, we'd have it all done yesterday. But that'd just get me in a whole lot of trouble if I were the director, because the ADA requirements might not met. Even though they look perfectly good, they may not meet the standard that is set by the government today. And so we have to fix that, and that's going to take some time.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Goldthorpe. Yeah, that's part of the big effort here with phase 1 is documenting, does this intersection have compliant ADA ramps? If not, what do those improvements look like? Do we need additional right-of-way? So really getting a good feel for that.
Madam President. Councilmember.
Thank you very much, Paige. Really appreciate the presentation. I was just curious, maybe the follow on after this to evaluate whether LPI has been successful in trying to reduce the number of pedestrian incidents in this way.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think this effort will take us quite a while. And like I said, we're working as fast as we can. We don't have anything officially in place right now to monitor that, but that is a good idea, and we will keep it. I think at this point, we do have some where LPI has already been implemented, and we've told people if there's any complaints. We've told ACHD admin staff if there's anything people have concerns about to direct them to us, and so we'll be monitoring that as well. So, but we haven't heard anything so far. So it's been good.
Madam President, thank you, first of all. This is something that we talked about a few months ago, and it's feeling even more urgent after we've had more deaths than I think we've seen in a long time. It's atrocious that people are getting mowed down in crosswalks, and we should do everything that we can to mitigate that. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this proceeds and where we can continue this, because there's a good list here, but it's certainly not expansive. And then what else we can do from a policy perspective to help protect pedestrians. A couple of these deaths have been in West Boise, and it's devastating. It's absolutely devastating. So I think we have a moral obligation to talk more and to do more on this.
Yeah, Madam President, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Really wonderful job. Just maybe a little bit more context that I might offer is that one of the big issues is that when you're waiting at the crosswalk, you're next to a pole, you're next to a box, you're next to all these other things. It's very, very difficult to see you. And so getting into the intersection before any car has a green light makes you suddenly visible to everybody that's there. And nobody's going to hit somebody if they can see them unless they're deranged. It really just doesn't happen. And so that's why we know that this works, across the country. It's been proven. One of the things I really appreciate about the work that you're doing is that these tend to be implemented in very high pedestrian specific areas, and that's really, really great. But a lot of the actual crashes and the more fatal ones happen in areas where there's less pedestrians because people aren't used to seeing people walking or biking around. And this can really play a huge, huge role in getting people walking and biking in those areas where the speeds tend to be a little bit faster, the roads tend to be a little bit wider, and the intersections tend to be a little more complicated. And so like Councilmember Bullets, I really appreciate this not being done just in the pedestrian areas, and I think that there probably is, some ability to examine where some of the bigger problem intersections when we get to the prioritization process. And that, like, yes, we do this as a system across the whole, but are there specific areas that we're tending to see a lot of problems? The schools that you were talking about, a lot of stuff in West Boise that we're talking about where we're seeing some of those higher speeds. So I wonder if there might be a prioritization process as well, as far as, when we lay these out. Certainly there's the low-hanging fruit, there's all the different changes that we need to make, but is there a way of prioritizing any sort of problem areas that exist?
So I think we've definitely looked at the crash data. That's something we'll look into a little bit further once I think we get more information from our consultants about what exactly needed. So there'll be a couple factors that play into prioritization, but absolutely that's a great point to bring up about, really looking at areas that are needing it more than others based on certain factors. So I think once we have more data and once we have more information about what will be required to implement this, then we can go from there. So yeah, it's a great point.
Councilmember Woodings?
That was my question.
Oh, okay, great.
If I may,
Yeah,
just
sure.
one additional point, and Paige, maybe you can speak to this. I believe in your previous presentation to us, you indicated that FHWA found that, up to a 13%
I think it was,
reduction
13%.
in auto pedestrian crashes. So it's not a panacea, it's a help, it's an incremental step in reducing accidents, but of course it's not going to prevent all these, unfortunately. So that's just the reality that we have to face.
Commissioner?
Yeah, Madam President, I just want to thank Councilmember Willets for referencing that you're exactly right. A lot of the old concepts of how do we move traffic at the peak hour are embedded in policy, and we are going through a policy process to look and see how do we manage the right-of-way for all users. And one of the things that we are now able to balance against what's called level of service, the convenience of moving through a particular corridor at the peak hour, is a level of traffic stress for walking and biking. So we now have a counterbalance, which we didn't have a few years ago, to sort of say, okay, there's multiple uses on these in the right-of-way. And so that's really helped. And ultimately, we want to move to a point where this is the default. We automatically default to, but it's obviously takes a transition to get there. So I just really appreciate that we're able to push through on that, and we're recognizing that the old models left out a whole lot of users in the right-of-way, and the new models we're trying to incorporate will take some policy changes. And it's not easy. It's going to take several years of updating our policies in order to do that, but I really appreciate you doing that and encourage you to get involved in helping us.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. I was just gonna say thanks. Really appreciate this page and appreciate that the agency has taken a look at the whole area to determine where these ought to go. I personally feel so much safer walking through intersections with a leading signal because I still look, right, to make sure that people aren't turning onto me, but it gives you that chance to advance a little bit further into the intersection before all the traffic's going. And appreciate too that it's both operations and policies. So this is a great step operationally, and then look forward to continuing the conversation on policies that protect everyone that are using these sidewalks and roads.
I just wanted to real quick put a pin in something that Commissioner Goldthorpe said about red light running. I know that our legislature limits what we can do with cameras, but I'm wondering if we don't look at ways that we can use cameras without getting sideways with state level policies in order to make sure that people know that it's not okay to run red lights. I have seen a lot more red light running over the past couple of years, and it's impossible to have our cops on every single intersection to enforce that. But I think that if we could get a little bit creative with how we're using cameras, I think that may be a help. So I just wanted to kind of put a pin in that.
All right, I want to move this along. Thank you, Paige.
Absolutely.
All right, so our third item is the State Street Projects update. Welcome, Tom, and I think this is a perfect segue into this project discussion.
Yes, I think it is as well. Thank you, Madam President, Mayor, members of the Commission and Council. For the record, my name is Tom Laws, Planning Manager here at the Ada County Highway District. I know we're a little behind schedule, so I'll speak quickly and knowing that we'll have multiple times to work with you as this project moves along. But specifically today we're talking about State Street, 8th Street to 14th Street, and a concept study that we're kicking off. So with this presentation, I'll just quickly give a project overview, highlight the objectives and goals, and then go into the schedule and next steps. But really, why are we talking State Street? I think this ties in really well with Jennifer's presentation earlier. For much of this roadway, it's really met that end of its useful life. You have sections where the ADA ramps are clearly non-compliant, the truncated domes are almost completely gone. You have sections of the curb and gutter that have been missing, a lot of that alligator cracking, and really the pavement condition is just in really poor shape. And so with that, we're looking to tackle this challenge into three different components. So the first section being State Street at that section, but then also from 2nd to 4th. With this section, we've actually received the bids, and the commission approval we scheduled for next week to get that project going, with the goal to have that construction start in the fall. The next section would be State Street 4th to 8th, and our plan is this fall to bid that one out with anticipation to have that under construction next year. And then finally, the 8th to 14th section, kicking off the concept study now, which will bleed into next year. Depending on how much design is required with that, that'll be 24, 25, with the goal to construct the majority of it in 25 and likely a little in 26. Just to really highlight this area, what we're talking about is 14th to 8th, and really what we're looking at is this transition from west of 14th Street having 5 lanes, and then when you get east to 8th Street, 2 lanes. So how do you transition from that 5-lane corridor over these key blocks down to the 2 lanes east of 8th Street? For the project team, including myself, we have Aaron Williams, our newest senior transportation planner, tracking this, but we also really wanted to coordinate with our partners. And so Bree with your team has been actively working on this with us, as well as Stephen from Valley Regional Transit and Zach with CCDC. For our project objectives, it's really to complete this concept study that determines that cross-section, at the end of the day, promoting safety and increasing the mobility and needs of all users. And how we aim to accomplish that is with these goals. So as I mentioned up front with those images, replacing that aging roadway, upgrading the pedestrian and stormwater facilities, exploring bike facilities both along the corridor, but then particularly across the corridor too, and making sure we have those safe crossings. Adding streetscape improvements, working in coordination with CCDC, really keeping an eye on that proposed development in the area, knowing the YMCA and some other major projects are right along this section. Blending all that with VRT, knowing that this is one of our priority corridors to make sure that they can maintain the frequency and growth goals that they have. Increasing that safety and comfort for all users, and then, as a constrained corridor, doing everything we can to maintain that existing right-of-way throughout. For schedule, we came to the commission just a few weeks ago, and over the last month and a half, we've been meeting with that core team to develop that scope of work. We're undergoing consultant selection right now with the goal to really kick off this in July, end of June. Over the summer and fall, we'll be doing that alternative analysis, looking at everything from crash history, traffic modeling, that level of service that Commissioner Hansen mentioned for bicyclists and pedestrians, and how that incorporates with the transit operations throughout. We'll have Following that, we'll have some of those alternatives fleshed out. We'll do heavy public outreach, stakeholder coordination, and eventually working towards a final recommendation around this time next year. And just to really highlight that, so actually tomorrow, with that scope and consultant selection, we had several supplemental questions that we provided to a few of our consultants, including highlighting their transit expertise, experience with similar corridors with these unique trade-offs throughout downtown core, things like that, which our goal is to have those tomorrow, and then next week having that core team together to review and eventually select that consultant. We'll then be developing those alternatives once they're on board, and once we have a good sense of what those trade-offs alternatives are, have that public stakeholder partner engagement. And we absolutely anticipate coming back to the city council and discussing those for your feedback as well. Once that's all complete, we hope to have a project recommendation and be able to move forward with that construction timeline. And with that, I know that was a lot of information really fast, but I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Commissioner Goldberg?
Just quickly, and it's probably, Tom, if you can answer this, I'll be amazed. This is the first project we've had going on close to the Capitol. Do we have to get Joe Palmer's permission to do this?
No, I don't think so. Not on this phase.
Councilmember Halliburton.
Yeah, Madam President, I know that I'm not saying anything new here, but this is right next to Boise High School. It's our most urban high school, and almost every single one of those students and kids is crossing over State Street multiple times a day. Also the proximity to the YMCA, and especially some of the elderly folks that go to the YMCA and folks with limited mobility. This is really an area to explore what we can do for pedestrian and bicycle safety. And one area that I would just put a pin in is that it can take people a long time to cross over an intersection, and sometimes the time of those crosswalks don't always line up with someone who had a knee replacement, a broken ankle, torn ligaments in their knee, broken bones in their foot, or anybody who might have some permanent or temporary mobility issues. And I really think we need to explore how much time we're giving people to cross over those. So I just want to make sure that I put a pin in that conversation. I know that you're already talking about it and have lots of trust and faith that you're looking into it.
Thank you. Councilmember?
Tom, can you help level set? So are you, in terms of the widening or narrowing of the road, can you just talk a little bit about where it starts and where it ends? Because I think I heard that it would stop short of the Capitol. Thank you.
That is correct, yes. So we actually, the section really to the east of 8th Street is going to be part of that second section that'll be bid this fall. In terms of 8th Street itself, that intersection is part of our 8th Street concept study we adopted earlier this year with CCDC, looking at that protected bike lanes on both sides. So in terms of the eastern portion, this extent really begins outside of that intersection, just west of 8th Street. Moving along to the west, the goal will be to include the entire 14th Street intersection as well, and look at the potential of signalizing that intersection with this effort.
So remind me, what is it currently? Is it currently?
It is just west of 14th Street, 5 lanes. Okay. And shortly, as you're heading east from 14th, it pretty quickly jumps to 4 after you get from 14th. And then it's really as you get closer to 8th that it jumps to 3 and then 2.
Okay, so it would extend it to 5 lanes, then to reduce to 4, and then as the Capitol is more of a pedestrian thoroughfare there, then it would be 2.
That's exactly what the concept we'll be looking at, is where do those tapers begin? Are we going from 2 lanes immediately right here at 14th? That's an extreme example. Or does it slowly transition from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 as you navigate across this section? But
so a couple of comments, because I worked in state government in this area for more than 10 years. That area between the Capitol and the business complexes is heavy pedestrian, except for the winter when people are going in the tunnel. So I can see the wisdom in making that more of a pedestrian type thoroughfare. One thing that I do think you need to consider is, because of all the parking garages behind now and to the side, how traffic navigates
gravitates around that.
Good point,
Because that is where state employees park. So, something to consider when you think about that and the directional there, because that will change as well.
Thank you.
I just want to, one thing that Tom left out, and something that's probably going to be in the concept, is we're very much leaning towards this whole project being concrete. And that obviously increased the costs, but it's going to supposedly last, 75 years. And so I just want to emphasize how important this project is, not only just to the downtown core, how much the proximity to the high school, the development that's on deck, that's coming, and that's currently in process. But we really need your guys' partnership and commitment to engaging in this project, because we have an opportunity to make this the best, probably I would say in terms of a segment that's so complicated, we have an opportunity to make this the best state street in the state, truly. And that serves all users, it's innovative, that's 21st century, right? And so I just urge you all to please engage with us, ask us questions. Thank you for your commitment and plugging in your staff to this process and the project team, but we have one shot to make this right, and we want to just nail it, and we need your help to do that.
Madam President, thank you for that. I think that's really important, and just encourage that continued collaboration, especially with CCDC. I know you've done a lot already in this area, but to your point, there's a lot of development and things that are happening, and so the ability to really be creative and thoughtful about how we navigate this space, I think is really important, especially given all the children and the variety of our citizens that really focus down in this area. So appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. Commissioners, briefly.
Just want to say the larger context, the city of Boise and ACHD 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, made a major investment in Whitewater Park Boulevard with the notion that that would encourage traffic heading from the west to going to downtown to use that. It's not happening. They're still using State Street and then turning on 9th. So it's like we've already made a major investment in that infrastructure. We also converted Jefferson to 2 ways. It's still heavily underutilized. So the fact that we already have infrastructure and we can now look at this just as Councilmember Willett says, as something that'll be a little more focused on the movement of pedestrians back and forth. So the context, I think, is real important, and the involvement of the city into it.
Madam Mayor.
Madam Chair, thanks. This is a really, as you said, a really great opportunity to work together. Bree from my office was listed up here as the link, and I appreciate the team and the collaboration that's existing between ACHD and the city. And there's other partners, CCDC, the Y, as you mentioned, others. And just as the Capitol complex is very people-oriented right now with people moving back and forth, I mean, imagine what it will be like when we've got 200-some new homes off of 11th Street, and we've already got kids throughout the year, moving downtown for lunch and back and over to Fancy Freeze, but we'll have 200-some new families living right in this area. So the ability to safely allow all types of movement is key in this. And I've asked Bree to help facilitate check-ins for the council on this project, so that the council is aware of where things are at and have organized opportunities and predictable opportunities to engage, for Bree then to have feedback to share back with ACHD.
Excellent. Thank you.
Madam President, one quick comment. I know that this is really dicey with the legislature, and I just encourage more conversation as this moves along so that there's not any surprises once you get down the road. Metaphorically, physically.
There's a lot of road puns. So yes, thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. So just due to time, do you mind if I just kind of want to stand by, Director? Just sit down, I guess. Sit down, stand by. All right. So those of you that might have that tune in to our meetings, you probably have seen that we've talked a lot about the Emerald Bridge. It's been on our integrated 5-year work plan. We have, and if you're not familiar with it, it's notoriously notoriously unsafe. We've made a lot of investments in Emerald as a bikeway. It's a really safe corridor up until you approach that bridge. And what's tricky about it is because it crosses over the connector, and so technically the main section, the middle section of that bridge is owned and maintained by ITD. And so in order for us to make improvements, and when we've looked at making improvements, we would have to leave that section alone because it's not in our jurisdiction. And so despite that though, Director Wong and staff, we explored some design features to make it safer on the approach and in the sections of the bridge that we maintain control over. And we put that out to bid, and the bid was nearly $3 million. So we could basically have a new bridge, but we would still have to leave a section of that bridge untouched and unsafe. And so as a commission, a couple weeks ago, we decided to reject the bid, not because we don't care about Emerald, but because how can we build a coalition of partners, namely ITD and the city, to explore innovative funding mechanisms and partnerships so that we could basically redo that bridge expeditiously. And so that was the point of this being on the topic today. I know you all care about these types of projects immensely, and so far Director Wong and we had a joint meeting with ITD just last week, and they indicated support to have these conversations and look at, grant funds or whatever types of savings to see how we can partner in rebuilding or repurposing this bridge. So that's extremely promising. So we wanted to naturally bring this up to you all and just get that initial indication of how you'd like to proceed and be part of that conversation in hopes that we can work faster offline in search of a solution.
Sure. I believe that, I'm not sure if our staff is engaged already, but we are more than ready and willing to work with ITD and you all to develop and design, but importantly to determine whether or not there are funding sources that might be available, and then to advocate for those.
And to your point, we've also had our grants folks look into that as well, and Emerald is a perfect candidate just due to the nature of the geographical and populations that surround the bridge. It's there's a lot of vulnerable folks, and it's a high renter population that are obviously more reliant on other types of transportation. So it checks all those boxes as well.
President Pickering, can you remind us of when ITD actually plans to do any work on the bridge?
They don't.
There's no foreseeable.
It's in the
date.
tip though. It's in the tip. It's just
Okay.
it's just a future unfunded project.
Unfunded project. Okay.
Yep.
Madam President, I had the same question and was wondering if anyone has any context around where it is in the tip and what Compass's engagement has been to date on this project.
Basically, Director, do you want to? So basically, it's obviously been in the tip for a while, but now that we're having these conversations, they can move it into that next step fairly easily. Now that we've alerted them that this is a high priority.
Plus their funding is not just pie in the sky.
Right.
Yeah.
That there may be some opportunities either by the end of the year with some leftover funds or grant funds, right? So there's several different levers that they might be able to pull, but they can't, obviously they will do it once ACHD in the city obviously dedicate staff and resources to figure it out.
Well, Madam Chair, to be clear, I can't commit resources.
Oh, of course.
I can commit people resources, but at this point can't commit financial resources.
And that's what I'm.
Okay,
yes.
great.
Madam President, and just to add a little context there, we can control where this project falls in our priorities. And so I'm not totally sure where it is now, but we might look at where it needs to be.
And that was something that was a little confusing to us, because I know you've worked on and advocated for a Liberty Ped Bridge, right? And so I want to, and we obviously don't have time to go into too much depth about that. Obviously there's different merits to those two different projects, but just making sure that we're all on the same page around if you're allocating resources to that, which might take longer, when we could work together on an Emerald Street Bridge and get that done pretty fast due to the nature nature of the available funding streams or what have you, right? I'd want to make sure that we're being mindful of the resources that you all and your priorities that you've established, but then being mindful of, well, hey, this is an opportunity for us to all work together on this bigger issue that's been a problem for quite some time. Councilmember Nash, did you have something?
Yeah, did you have any conceptualizations of it when you were considering the bid that you received?
We do have a design, but of course the design didn't include that portion, right, that we don't have jurisdiction over. So we can, retrofit and use the designs that we've already created and have that be part of the discussion in doing in a different design altogether. So we've done that preliminary work in terms of the approach, existing right-of-way, those types of technical details we've already done.
Could you offer me more clarity on ITD's position on this? Did they want to engage?
Yes.
And they're open?
They are, yep. Yep. Very supportive. They were eager to know the outcome of this meeting and the indication from you all about your support for this.
Where are they at on funding specifically?
They don't have any funding for it at this moment, but are very eager and supportive of collaborating on either a grant opportunity or seeing what other funding streams might be available at the end of the budget year or something like that.
They made reference twice, I believe, to that $100 million that they still have as far as a grant funding.
Yeah, so they've got those grant funds, they've got several different buckets of funding, but it just depends on, obviously, some other factors, lots of
Just
factors.
want to go on the record and indicate my support. That's a lot of commuters there, myself included. I ride my bike across that nearly every day, and it is not safe. And I would just like to speak for just running the connector through there. There are long-standing problems that creates for my neighborhood and for all the neighborhoods that live above and below that. So anything we can do to better connect those neighborhoods, especially I think about a lot of the people that work at St. Al's. There's a lot of good parks just across the connector there that we'd really like to connect people to. And all the businesses and services that are there near the mall that connects to. There's a lot of people that we can connect with a project like this. So I would just want to indicate my support.
Thank you.
Madam President, just one quick comment. At some point, it may be worth doing a site visit with interested stakeholders, because if you haven't walked or ridden over that bridge, if you haven't seen what it would take to be in a wheelchair to get across that section of town, like, you really have no idea how bad it is and the reason why it is, almost a crisis to get something like this completed. And so that might be something that we consider in the future as well, because you really have to get out of your car and cross over that thing to understand how bad the problems that it creates in that neighborhood.
And so, a bit to that, so ITD did say, obviously the bridge has a lot of life left in it, which is partly why they weren't initially eager to consider a complete rebuild or some big changes, right? But due to the nature of us really pushing this and the need, and also I think our region, 3 board member was like, oh, absolutely, this is a very dangerous bridge. It's pretty unanimous now. So despite that, they're very much like, let's work together on finding a solution. So that's pretty.
And Madam President, I'd just like to that we're in the process of codifying now. We have a regional activity center where Boise Town Square is. We have another one around St. Al's. And so that bridge is really the only connection between those two for both vehicles and pedestrians. So I think that prioritizing that and looking at where it stands in the city's priorities, looking at other things that we might have on our list that maybe make sense to deprioritize and bump this up makes a lot of sense. I'm very supportive.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think you're hearing consensus that this is important. Right, but what we'd have to do, and we can do this, is in the compass list, change the order of the Liberty Street Bridge and this priority. And where there are opportunities to collaborate with both you and ITD, we should. And so we can reprioritize that and get to work on seeking sources of funding. And I'd encourage ITD, when they do have these buckets of funds, to truly take a look at it, given that while there's useful life structurally, we don't want to end up taking a life because of design and how we work through that with them.
Okay, well, we'll reach out, thank you. All right, and last but not least, speed limit setting process. Mr. Ryan Head, this was another topic that we've talked about in previous joint meetings, so I really do want to have this be more of a discussion, and really curious to hear your guys' thoughts around this process and maybe future conversations around it and how we can be more aligned in the speed limits that you'd like to see in your city. Ryan, go ahead. Thank you.
Madam President, Madam Mayor, Council Commission, for the record, Ryan Head, Deputy Director of Development and Technical Services. I could come up with all sorts of puns on speeding through a presentation on this, but I think I'll leave it there. Just the question of how do you set a speed limits really is a tug of war, right? You have the desire that people want to go, you have the safer, or what is the safest speed for all users, you have the context, your land use, your schools, your other things, and how the built environment is. Whether there's trees, sometimes that can affect how fast people go. There's lots of different methods to look at this. Just wanted to give you a primer on how this works from ACHD's perspective. The first is the law that governs us in setting speeds. Really, in evaluating a speed, we have kind of two options. We can look at what is the traffic doing now. Generally, in the transportation world, you look at what is that prevailing speed that people are going, and you try and set it around that, recognizing that's where people feel comfortable. But there's also some policy perspective in this, and wanting to get speeds to a place where it's the most safe. And that's not always the speed that people feel comfortable driving. So in state law, there's two ways you look at this. One is through a traffic investigation, but the other is looking at the land use context. What is the neighborhood, what is appropriate for the neighborhood? Is it appropriate around schools to have higher speeds just because people feel comfortable going that speed? So we have these kind of two tools in our toolbox. We have traffic engineers who do look at the speeds and evaluate that and see what's appropriate from that perspective based on what people are going. But we also do take a look at that context. From the city's perspective, in your code, you have the ability to set a prima facie speed limit, which is really that if no other signs are posted, this is the speed within your jurisdiction. So when we look at an existing road, the first is we get a request, and that request can come from anybody. And really, for our perspective, all it takes is one person asking us to review the speeds on a road, and we will send our team out and go and review and monitor what are the existing speeds. We'll look at the speed data, the land uses, what's the crash history there, is there parking, and gather all that information together to make a recommendation on what we do moving forward. Do we make a change? Do we not? A couple other things to just make you aware of. When ACHD is doing a project, we also look at the speeds. ACHD is set as a default speed when we are looking at widening a roadway or modifying an arterial roadway, that our default, we will design it to 35 miles per hour. And our plan is to post it to that. That's not always been the case. That's a newer practice at the district, and we believe it's the right decision moving forward. The design speed is when you set up the engineering, the turn radius, and other, when you have turns on the road, what's the right speed that we should design that? What's the desire that we have? And we have the ability to set that as a target. What are we trying to get that speed to be? And so we have set that our design speed will be equal to what we want the speed limit to be on that roadway moving forward. That may require some other types of features. A straight road that's wide doesn't necessarily have any features that cause you to want to go slowly. And so that's where we look at things like vertical elements such as street trees, and the city works to bring buildings closer to the road. That creates more of an incentive to go at a lower speed. There's different types of features that we can look at that we try and incorporate bulb outs at the intersections where you extend the curb in to try and to slow the speeds as well. So those are components we look at through that design process. And then ultimately, what's that posted speed? And that's, in some ways, it's a partnership between the city and ACHD from the engineering and the enforcement perspective. Because we can set a speed at whatever, but ultimately, if it's not going to be enforced, it's only going to have so much impact. And so we try and find those design features that we can to try and accomplish that, but we also require that partnership with the city. Over the last number of months, we've looked at a number of roads and received requests and made modifications to lower the speed limit in a number of different areas. Most of these have been based on these changes have occurred because we've looked at the land use context and said, it may not be appropriate to leave the speed limit where it is, or how can we make it consistent? If you have a corridor that goes from 30 to 35 to 30 to, you want to make it consistent along that to try and get more predictable speeds along those corridors. And so at the direction of the commission, we've made a number of modifications on streets. You can see here, most recently was Fort and Boise. Really, if you drive down Fort, we looked at that. If, just as an example, you have 3 schools, you have low-income housing, you have taller buildings, you have trees, you have historic locations, you have parks, and really we found that it's almost difficult to drive 30 miles an hour down that road, and so we made the recommendation based on that to move that to 25 miles an hour. But just to give you an example here. With that, I'll turn the time over to you for any discussion or questions.
Councilmember Halliburton.
Madam President, I certainly have lots of opinions about, this issue for sure. One, the prima facie being set by the city, is under our control. We have a really funky one that's 30 when there's stop signs or 20 when there's not. It all has to do with the north end and there not being stop signs. At one point there being those now. That's an easy code cleanup that I know that we're talking about with Vision Zero. So that's really on our end. I'm excited to see some of the lowering speed limits that you've done, and specifically not just in the areas where there was enough neighborhood input, which tends to be in your more wealthy neighborhoods, to actually get those speed limits lowered, but actually looking at what are the factors that are similar in different areas so that there's a little bit of a better equity approach. I guess, one thing, there is the concept of the road design, and that has to be a part of it because roads will, self-enforce as far as what the speeds go. But especially on 2-lane roads, there is also a pace car effect. And you won't have the huge impact that you want, but still lowering speed limits to the speed that you want to go. If one person is driving the speed limit on that road, then every single person behind that person is going that speed limit as well. And we know from studies in Seattle, we know from studies across Canada that works too. And so I think that, the idea of the character of the neighborhood and the speed that you want people to go, they can happen. Ideally, they would happen at the exact same time, but when we know that we don't have a road project, we can still address, I think, speed limit in those areas. And that certainly needs to be something that we're looking at. And I guess maybe the last comment that I would put in there for now, we've got some streets like State Street that we're, especially in kind of northwest Boise, where we're putting more and more developments, we're getting some new stoplights, and speed limits are still maintaining that very, very high speed in those areas. And the character is starting to become more similar to what we see further down, like after you cross Glenwood when the speed finally reduces. And so I think that there's sort of this tendency for us to plan for, historically people have always driven this speed on this road, but now all of a sudden there's a stoplight and a crosswalk, and there's housing, and there's more people that live there. And I guess one of the things I would like to see is that when we are putting in new development, especially this high density development in these areas, that we are re-examining what the speed limits are at the same time, because all of a sudden when you have a bunch of people crossing at the crosswalk that weren't there before. And so that's an area that I hope we can explore, is when we're approving developments, is there also a need to be thinking about, is there a speed limit change that needs to happen? And again, State Street is this perfect example of these big developments that we have coming up here right next to a 45-mile-an-hour road, and they still have to cross over State Street to get to, the Greenbelt or these other areas. And so maybe, with our zoning code rewrite and these early meeting processes that we're having at the very beginning, that can be part of the discussion as well. Does a development need to lead to a change in speed limit based off the amount of activity?
Councilmember Paget?
Madam President, a couple of things. This is difficult because you want to make a joke and you also want to recognize you want to stay in your lane and all that, right? Like, roads aren't us. The land use is us, the city. The enforcement is us at the city. It came up earlier. We're having a hard time right now staying on top of things like running red lights. We don't have the bandwidth or the resources to patrol traffic infractions because with the amount of resources we have, frankly, there are more serious problems that our police department needs to deal with. I'm not an expert on speed limits, and I'm not going to, try to give any policy direction. But from the city's perspective, or at least mine, if you have a neighborhood that wishes everybody was driving slower, and it's not designed for that quite yet, or it's arguable, or it's a close call, you lower the speed limit, they'll just complain that everybody's now speeding, right? Unless we can show up and enforce and police that either through actual existing design as opposed to planned future design, or through law enforcement presence, I perceive that I will hear we traded one problem for another. I don't like the cars going this fast in my neighborhood will turn into, I don't like the cars speeding in my neighborhood. So, I mean, you hit on all this in your presentation, but you'll tend to hear, I think, from the people who live on a street that they'd like the cars to be traveling slower, they'd like it to be more walkable, etc. Unless we can actually make it happen, we shouldn't be, in my mind, setting that expectation with the public that we've done something, or that we're moving forward, or that we're making progress, or that we're helping them, unless we're confident it will. Because we have this all the time in our land use meetings. It's something we worked on hard in the zoning code. What expectation do you set with the public for how this process is going to go and what will be effective? And my personal experience with Harrison Boulevard, when we had that conversation 2 years ago, is the behavior hasn't changed, but the speed limit has. I was just on Warm Springs last week, and my perception there was kind of the same. So I'm just flagging the Debbie Downer side of this, which is just acquiescing to a neighborhood's request to lower the speed limit in close calls may not actually do as much as that neighborhood wants or needs. And if it doesn't, it sets up a chance for the public to be resentful to both agencies, and it's just a factor to consider and think about.
And I want to respond a little bit, and I think you're absolutely right. We are seeing that. And coming from my district, I've worked with a lot of folks that are making those requests. But I think it's also helpful for policymakers who are plugged into their districts, because even if we do change, and I noticed you guys noticed Mountain View Drive and Goddard and Cole, right? That section is really dangerous and tricky. And even though we did adjust the speed limit, to your point, people are still speeding, but we have things on deck in terms of improving that roadway. And I think it helps create this momentum and buy-in in terms of the neighborhoods staying plugged in to find that deeper solution. Because they're like, oh, you are right, it didn't change behavior in a lot of cases, so we do need this infrastructure to be shifted. And so I totally see your point, but I think if we kind of look bigger too, it can help us work collaboratively with our communities in finding those bigger solutions.
That's a great point. I don't know if I'm going to take up any more time, but it just sort of dawned on me that what I was trying to say is, if you are changing the speed limit but not the behavior, and you can't enforce it, all you've done is turned up the dial on the number of crimes people commit. That's it. You've made it so that the behavior that wasn't a crime is now a crime, and you're not enforcing it. And that, from the city's perspective, is something that we want to pay attention to, because that part's our job.
No, that's a great point. Thank you. Council Member Williams.
Well, I just wanted to point out, I am the pace car. Like, I love the pace car. I set my cruise control to 25, and I just roll down the street. And if
former council president Clegg had a sign that said pace car on the
Yeah,
back.
that's back in the
your
90s.
next-
That's
your next
amazing.
step.
Yeah, we all had them.
But I just wanted to add, as we're looking at speed limits in neighborhoods and other places where complaints are coming in, I would encourage just looking at what the other infrastructure is as well, as far as pedestrians, particularly on arterials. As I'm traveling through the city, I notice large spanses where people can't cross arterials. And, you know, we're thinking about connecting people to parks and connecting people to libraries and commercial interests. And I know, you know, like, we live on the wrong side of Shaw Mountain Road for my kids to get to the natatorium. And every time they have to cross Shaw Mountain Road, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just like, it's so nerve-wracking as a parent. And I know there's parents all over the city who are thinking the same thing. So I think as we're looking at those things, really looking at how people without cars can get across arterials is also really important.
Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President, yes, design makes speed limits self-enforceable. How many of you have driven on Kootenai? Please
With the new stuff?
go there. It's going to be, you're going to start to get requests saying, that's what I want. There's a design that makes the driving on Kootenai consistent with the posted speed limit. There'll be a lot of requests of that. Second is that we don't need to do it with permanent infrastructure. Rose Hill, we have authorized the installation of temporary curb extensions, bulb outs. Sometimes it's just paint, but there'll be some features put on Rose Hill that we consider temporary. We're gonna test it, involve the neighborhood, and so that's another aspect that says, okay, we don't have to wait so long until, because we approved Kootenai in 2017, 2018, and it's 5 years later. Oh, by the way, the ribbon cutting's on the 27th of July. You're welcome to come. And so those are two important things, but we do have to make sure that when we design it, it's to the preferred speed limit. We can't do it to the old speed limit. And we're doing that on Warm Springs. You notice that's been reduced from 30 to 25, and there's a scoping project. Finally, how many years has it been since it was a state highway? To redesign it. We've had a number of walks on that to go through, and so we're scoping. It's a very complicated segment. We're just focusing right now from Avenue C to Windsong, but there's still 3 segments that we're separately dealing with. We've had a couple of walks on there. Please come with us on those walks and get your input. There's an open house today at Adams School, and then we're going to gather more information. But we are designing it to the new posted speed limit. We're not designing it to the old speed limit. So that's also part of the reason why it's important. This is our goal. Let's post it now, and then design and put temporary features in. So that's kind of the way in which we're approaching it. And I want to just point out, we have the tools, level of traffic stress, that help us to objectively evaluate what the impact is going to be.
With what we're doing during our chip seal project this year on Boise Avenue, you'll see 2 things. People comparing it very favorably to what happened on Kootenai, and people just going off ballistic about what they think is gonna happen and what they hate about Kootenai. And it's about 50-50 right now. And yesterday I spent a lot of time with a guy in Jim's district who I introduced to Jim later, and I don't know if he's called you yet, but by the time I got through going through the whole scenario, that wound up with people bouncing off of his bumper into caskets, he started to understand the scope of the problem. And but a lot of people probably never will.
All right. Any other? Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just maybe add a couple more things. One that's not related, but I do understand the point of, like, if we lower the speed limits and we can't enforce it, then we've got a speeding and a breaking the law issue versus just people driving too fast in the neighborhood. I also think that if you have one council president that's going a slower speed and slowing everybody else down, and that prevents a fatality or a serious injury, you know, that's potentially worth doing as well. I know that a lot of other cities who've done major changes with speed very, very heavily invested in this sort of like, whatever the visible speed limit things that you see when you're driving down the road. So this is how fast you're going. Thank you. Are investing heavily in those because it does take behavioral change, and people want to go the right speed limit. A lot of times they just don't know that they're going faster because that natural speed that you were talking about earlier. But once they start to feel that and that habit, it's that behavioral change that comes with it. And so I think that there are investments or policies that if we are doing changes about installing things that are either permanent or temporary that might help with that, but that's early investments that may need to be taken. I think it's an important discussion. The last thing I just wanted to add, I don't think Karen Gallagher is here today. Today I think is her last day at the City of Boise. Her retirement party was yesterday. I know so many of you at ACHD have worked with her over the years. She's actually the person who introduced me to actually getting involved in transportation discussions. So if you have a chance to relay your thanks and gratitude to Karen, I would encourage everyone to do so.
Thank you. All right, well, it's 10:29. Thank you all for being here, your questions, your